Welcome, everybody, to another edition in our continuing series of Zoom interviews with BC election candidates. Today, we're joined by Trevor Hamilton with the BC Conservative Party. Hi, Trevor. Shall we do the wave? The Zoom
Hey,
wave?
how you doing? Is that how it goes?
Great. Yeah, so thanks for joining us. For those of you that haven't listened to a podcast or watched one of these Zoom interviews, this is a casual conversation with candidates in the upcoming provincial election, which is just 2 days away. We're recording this on Thursday, and the polls, advanced voting has ended. It's the election day on Saturday. That's the important one. Those polls are open from 8 in the morning till 8 at night. Please go and vote. If you haven't registered, it's not hard. Go to your nearest polling station and you can register and vote on the spot. If you don't know where to vote, go to electionsbc.ca and you can look up your riding and you can find out where your polling stations are. Go and do that. And the last thing I should say is that if you got a mail-in ballot and you have not mailed it back, it's too late to do that. But you could take it to any polling station or any Elections BC office and drop that ballot off and it will get counted. So our conversation with Trevor today is a casual, laid-back one. I like to lay out kind of the format for people that are listening. It's a casual conversation. It's not really a Q&A, although I'm going to lead with some questions. It's also not a debate. If you hear us talk about something today and you'd like to know what other parties think, please go and have a look at some of the other Zoom interviews or visit their Facebook or their web pages and figure that out. We're going to get to know Trevor today and what he and the Conservative Party think about some issues. Good. So with that, let's kind of kick it off. And so Trevor, I kind of like to start with people's origin story. Give us kind of your history in politics, what inspired you to run, and also maybe what inspired you to run for the Conservative Party.
Well, I had a paper route starting when I was 11, and then I ended up with all of the major papers as well as the Nelson Daily News back in Nelson. I did the Province, Vancouver Sun, and the Nelson Daily News all in one swoop, and I'd just always be reading since I was a little kid. I don't know, it would always piqued my interest, and what I found. I'd read that, and then I'd read sports and comics and things like that. And it was always just there. And my grandfather was mayor of Kelowna way back in the 70s there, and I don't know if that had some kind of influence on me, but it probably did. He was always talking politics, listening to CKNW and things like that. And when I went off and got into history and did a little political science, but that's more just history. But yeah, and it's always just been kind of at the forefront of my mind. Always found things to complain about. I figured I better stand up and be counted. And in terms of joining the Conservative Party and becoming conservative, when I started out, my big turn was went to a G8 protest when I was out east going to school there. I just ran into a bunch of people and none of it made any sense, and it just all seemed really destructive. And then I started, the more I'd read, and I kind of got into anarchism and Kropotkin and Proudhon and those kind of guys. But then I found Roger Scruton, and he really opened my eyes to what conservatism could mean and what it should stand for. And with the idea that we have thousands of years worth of institutions that have kind of organically grown to support the good versus support the evil, and gone through all of those processes to reach that where we expect justice and we expect things to be a fair playing field, and we expect equality and individual liberty. And those things took thousands of years to develop, and they need to be conserved and passed on to our children and grandchildren. And that really struck a chord with me, and that's what drew me to conservatism. And then I joined the party back in, I think it was 2014, 2015, after they bombed out in the last election there, or in the 2013 election. And the party pretty much just crumbled to the ground. And that was as I was becoming more and more conservative. So as I saw that happening, I thought there was a great opportunity to actually get in and have a voice within a party and maybe help from the ground up and set policies and things like that as they were rebuilding. And there were a lot, well, not a lot, but there were people who were dedicated and also saw that as a chance to really come in and affect BC politics in a way that affects conservative change with conservative values. We've managed to build it up. And as you can see, we've got more candidates riding in this riding. And next election, hopefully, we can field a full contingent of candidates and things like that. But I think it's a growing movement, and it's true. And that's the biggest appeal of conservatism, is that it's true. And so if we can, the more we get out there, the more we build, the more popular it's going to become, because I feel that the basic philosophy behind it is irrefutable.
Yeah, well, it's it is striking, and in the brief conversation we had before we started recording today, I've said to you that there seems to be a lot more candidates, particularly since the last election, and the question I want to put to you on that is, with that growing list of candidates, and I think you're covering, if I remember correctly, 30 or 40% of all the ridings available out there, which is a significant number. I think that fields more candidates than the Greens did in their early days. So I think, that's, I'm a big supporter of a multi-party system. And I think, when we look down to see the sort of black and white nature of American politics, I think Canadians really appreciate that we have more than just two choices. And small parties, as I think we're in this election because the Green Party held the balance of power in the legislature. So small parties definitely have a huge effect on politics. So do you, what is your view on the general sort of landscape of BC politics? With the Liberals and the NDP dominating for so long, do you think that the Conservatives are gaining some popularity as, for lack of a better word, an antidote to those two parties? Do you think that theory holds some water? What do you think on that?
Absolutely. It's one of those inevitable consequences of poor governance, right? And the ability of the party to kind of lock out common people with the two. And if you aren't locked out, you need to adhere to the party line. The way that they've strengthened the party whip over the past decade and a half is really detrimental to democracy in all kinds of ways. And as far as I'm concerned, the system's broken. It's just a big train of graft and corruption, billions of dollars just being handed out left and right. And I'm not the only one who sees it. It's pretty common knowledge, everything that's gone on over the past 25 years, 30 years. Well, all of my life, I never stop reading about it. It doesn't end. And we really do. We get a little complacent, and you talk about vote splitting and things like that. But I really do think, it reached such levels under the Christy Clark Liberals that it became obvious people need a recourse, and we need some way out. And that was, what can you do but stand up and be counted?
Yeah, most
and
definitely.
That's where people are at.
Yeah, well, I think, the history of the Liberal Party is a coalition that included what I would say federal conservatives. The political landscape of the three Abbotsford ridings is provincially liberal, but federally conservative. But, as you say, you have a look back at some Liberal governments, and they may not reflect conservative policy ideals at all. So that means there's room for what I would call a big C conservative party and candidates here in the Abbotsford riding. So
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So
they both become big government central planners, right? And you can see whether the LNG or the Site C, it's everywhere. And yeah, they're both pretty far left, and the Liberals can claim to be center right, but I don't see it.
Yeah, well, I think British Columbia is learning with the last 3 years of the NDP being in power that they're not all that different from Liberals, and that's why maybe they'll come away with a majority government. I'm not making any prediction there, but I think that it used to be I remember 30 years ago when the NDP party was considered socialist and communist and all of these crazy things. And now they're just maybe a different shade of liberal, So I think there's definitely some room in there. But I'm curious. So we all know that we're in a very unique campaign with the effect of COVID and our ability to go out and meet people and interact with people. And during a campaign, that can't be harder than on anyone than candidates who can't even go door knocking really. But there's still ways to communicate with people out there, telephone and social media. So I'm curious, when you're talking to people in your riding, and I think I mentioned that you're running in the Abbotsford Mission riding, what kind of feedback are you getting from both party supporters and the random voters that you're talking to? I know we hear from mainstream media what they think is important, but Abbotsford Mission is a unique riding, and the Valley has unique issues. What are you hearing from people out there?
I'm just hearing a lot of anger towards both of the major parties and a lot of disappointment, and they've really let people down. And people are just sick and tired of it. And I actually have been going door to door a little bit here and there. Maybe that's cheating, I don't know, but I got a pretty limited budget. So but yeah, the more I get out, and there's just been failure on so many fundamental levels that the government is absolutely required on, and that's their primary duty. We've got the courts where you want to talk about healthcare, education. They're not cutting it. And then they want to go and extend themselves and rack up these huge deficits, massive budgets and things like that, and claim to be job creators when we don't have enough judges, we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough sheriffs, we don't have bailiffs, we don't have anything on the fundamental jobs that they're supposed to actually be filling. And then they want to sit back and claim, oh, we're creating jobs, and still the ones that you're actually supposed to be responsible for before you go claiming to be anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So would you say that there is a conservative base out there that's fired up and active and
oh yeah, I was blown away by the amount of support that you've got the people that just give you the cold shoulder right off as soon as they see the conservative pin and things like that. But there are a lot of people who are receptive to it. A lot of people who want some change. So I figure if not this election, this snap election, it was a pretty sneaky call. And I think we had a few people not able to get their paperwork in time, things like that. So it was, it managed to snuff a lot of third party candidates out and limit the riding. But no, there is huge support. And I think the further we get into this financial and economic mess, the more it's going to grow. And, you see both parties just promising the moon to everyone. And it's immoral. It's irresponsible. It's all, there's so many negative words for it, but you can't put this on our grandchildren. We can't put this on future generations. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I think, that growing of the deficit is, we could probably spend an hour talking on just that alone. It's, there are so many opinions out there about whether COVID is allowing unrestricted spending and on the general effect of COVID itself, but also on sort of releasing the hounds to let different levels of government spend unrestrained. I don't know whether that's a good or a bad thing. I'm sure that in the future I will write a ton about it. But journalists, we're really good at reporting on what other people have done. We're not really thought of as being good at offering up too many solutions ourselves. So
I don't think that's part of your job. They're supposed to report on what happened.
yeah. Although I know that people listening will say, will accuse me of the opposite, of telling people what to do in my writings. But everybody's got to go through that, and don't be put off by people giving you the cold shoulder with the conservative pin. By the way, everybody feels that. Every party gets the same reaction for at least 60% of the population. So,
it's pretty good. You get some good ones. There's some, no, it's all part of the process there. Yeah, some people are stuck, and they're fair enough.
Absolutely,
fair enough.
But
I find COVID's a neat excuse, right, for all this spending. But if we'd been more prudent and more diligent in our spending when times were prosperous, we wouldn't be staring down the barrel of this gun. Economic disaster is almost a certainty at this point. It is not good, and if you look at the way that Greece went and the way Spain has gone and things like that, and the IMF, we have bonds floating around that nobody's buying. It's terrifying. And that's what our interest rates are going to be based on. And it's going to be a tough road to hoe. Yeah, I'm actually pretty nervous about the future of things and the way that we've racked it up. And if we don't start making cuts on our terms right now, when we default on loans, which modern monetary theory doesn't hold up. You can look in Venezuela, you can see it everywhere that's been tried, and they're talking about negative interest rates now, and that's even more devastating. So there's going to be a reckoning, and we need to be prepared for it. I think if we don't start making cuts on our terms, we're going to have to start making cuts on the terms of the IMF and the World Bank and things like that. And that's a prospect that I don't want to take. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Actually, there's economies generally cycle, and the cycle, as I'm probably telling you something you already knew, but the cycle is kind of like from grade 12 math, that old sine wave, and as the peaks and the troughs get bigger and bigger, as we push economies and debt and spending and debt in two opposite directions. The only thing that has ever really snapped that wave back to level has been rampant inflation. I think people of a certain age out there listening will recall mortgage rates of 18%. Will recall, the dollar at 63 cents. We'll recall those days, and that's how you right the ship. But if you've got huge deficits that go along with those massive inflation, then all sorts of things disappear from your economy. All manner of government services and all manner of employment and
business loans. It could be really scary times, and we should be prepared. And here's people trying to ignore it. Pretty much, it hasn't. Nobody brought it up. I've done 4 or 5 debates now and a dozen interviews, and nobody's brought it up. It's madness to me. I don't know what everybody's thinking or where they're looking.
I think it's all on paper, and that it doesn't really matter. And if the U.S. can go into debt $10 trillion, then Canada can go into debt $1 trillion. I mean, I think it's so abstract for the general voter. I think that's what it really is. I think the numbers are too big for a general voter to comprehend, particularly when all they care about is how they're going to pay their mortgage or put gas in the car or buy food. So, yeah, I think it's.
Are there $1 trillion of anything in existence?
I'm sure maybe COVID virus spores. There might be $1 trillion of those around. I don't know.
But yeah, I've heard that from and psychologists, and you just can't process the numbers, and they just go in one ear and out the other. Yeah, I find that too. I can't imagine $1 trillion of anything.
I call it a Seinfeld number. If you recall, Seinfeld called, I think it was a bazillion. Is there a bazillion of something? And that was Seinfeld. Yeah. So that's so do you think that's a focus of the party itself then? So talking about what people have been speaking with you in Abbotsford about, the party itself has a platform and some of the things it's interested in. If the party could dominate the media the way the Liberals and the NDP do, would that be one of the top 2 or 3 issues that they're most interested in British Columbians talking about?
Well, it would have to be at this point, right? Because if you don't have the free market and you don't free your children and your grandchildren from this type of debt slavery, then what are you conserving? And what are you passing on? And if what we're coming to is abject socialism and all of its failures that have been evident throughout history. It doesn't succeed. And so that is the number one thing, would be freeing up the economy from all of the government controls and regulations. Because otherwise we're passing on nothing of value, and freedoms will be curtailed and individual liberties will be put on hold. So it starts and stops there, right? Like, if we don't have the economy, we're not going to have any healthcare program. You saw it happen in Italy, right? And then you saw the effects of COVID there after their healthcare system crashed. So, if we actually have these things that are worth preserving, and I think that public option on the healthcare is one of them. And to see this ruling by the Supreme Court that to deny people adequate healthcare because what we're getting now isn't adequate and it's not sufficient. To see them deny that in the face of the Supreme Canada ruling, Court of Canada ruling that came down in Quebec years before, and to just turn a blind eye to that, proceed ahead. What are we doing? It's completely crazy. So the ideology that is driving economic and social programs in this province, it has to go by the way. It can't be ideologically driven anymore. We need a little more pragmatism with it here because things are going to come to a head, and hopefully later rather than sooner. But I got my doubts.
Well, I think it's been a big wake-up call for people all around the world with COVID. And I mean, there are lots of debates. I've had a number of requests to write and comment on anti-mask events and anti this event and anti that event. But if there is a silver lining in COVID, and I don't really think I would go so far as to call it a silver lining, it is kind of peeling back the shortfalls in our society, both economically, the way we've handled our seniors, the shortfalls in our healthcare system, what we're prepared to handle, and I think that may be peeling back that curtain and showing those philosophical errors, perhaps, may be politically good for Conservative Party and Conservative candidates. That the message from both large C and small C Conservatives, is exactly what you're saying: is to put the money in the bank to pay for things, when we need them, rather than keep spreading the money around now for things that maybe we either don't need or have been poorly planned to start with. So, yeah. So, COVID is, it has been a spotlight, I think, on a lot of things in our society. Yeah.
And I think it's really highlighted the arrogance that our government has and the lack of respect for our own individual liberties. When you mandate something, when it's coerced, you're going to get pushback from a certain percentage of people. It's just a natural human response to that, right? And we're brought up to be free people. We have a public education system that's supposed to teach us how to be free and responsible adults. And surely a free people would make the prudent and responsible decisions in these matters. But when you just walk around arbitrarily closing down businesses and changing the rules every 10 minutes, and when the rules are draconian, as some of them have been, it makes no sense. Leave it up. I feel I trust my friends and neighbors far more than I trust anybody in government issues decrease in any kind of sense. And you see people going around and they'll make the responsible decision when you let them. They treat everybody like they're a bunch of little children. You're going to get what we're seeing, and then everything becomes irrational and binary.
Yeah, but so as I was just saying, journalists wait till after and then they comment on things. We just have our print edition out now, and for those of you listening, please look for it in your mailbox. Everyone in Abbotsford should have had one by the end of today. Should have one delivered, and if you don't have one, you can send me an email and I'll make sure you get one. But in there is a column on seniors care, and there's I think people will find it interesting when they shut down our seniors' homes that well more than half of the care we give to our seniors, our healthcare system relies on family members to give them that care. Everything from feeding to giving them their meds, we rely on family members to do that. And in the haste to shut down the seniors' homes, we kept family away, but we allowed staff to move around. Staff that got to go home and go to Costco and go to the bar and do whatever they wanted to do, and we kept family out that would actually care about their exposure rates. Yeah. So there's I think your philosophy there is in real time. We can see it in real time with issues like our seniors. That's for sure.
No, it's tragic what's happened with the seniors. It's just heartbreaking, and there are more and more stories coming out every day, and it really yeah, it is just tragic. And to see people have been married for 60, 70 years, be separated for death, it rips your heart out. It really does. And there has to be a better way. There has.
Yeah, oh, most definitely. So I've got one more COVID related question, but it's not really about COVID. So we're 2 days from election day, and something on the range of about 40% of people have voted by mail-in ballot or by advance poll, which means that on Saturday we're likely not going to know who's won anything. It would have to be virtual landslides of voting in certain ridings to know who's won a riding, and because of that, we won't know who will run this province maybe for 2 or 3 weeks. What do you think of that? Do you think this is going to change voting forever, or do you think when COVID's over, if it is ever over, we'll go back to the way we used to do things? Is this a new paradigm for elections from now on? What do you think?
Oh, I sure hope not. It's good to get. I personally thought the voting day should always be a holiday, and maybe extend over the weekend to make sure everybody. We have atrocious voter turnout. 40%, 45. 45 is a good year for voter turnout. So yeah, I'd like to see it actually made into a long weekend. Try and get everybody out to vote, have barbecues, get more people out. But yeah, just on a fundamental level, I kind of have issues with the whole idea of mail-in voting and things like that. And I don't want to tie it in with all of the American nonsense that's going on or anything like that, but it is right. We've seen both parties cheat. And who was that Liberal staffer that came out and he said, "Oh, as long as you win by any means necessary," when he got fired with the triple deleting of the emails and things like that. So I don't put anybody past anything. You're dealing with huge amounts of power and influence and things like that, and whenever you have those positions of power, they're going to draw some pretty bad people. And I'd like it that you come, you show your ID, and everybody votes in person. In my perfect world, that's how it goes down. And yeah, take it over the weekend. Take the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even throw the Monday in there. Make sure everybody has a chance to get out and vote. And count them all up and announce on Tuesday. Yeah, I'd really like to get, hopefully in 4 years, there everything is back to normal and we can get everybody out in person.
Yeah, well, I think we all we all hope that for many different reasons. I think people keep talking about a new normal, but I like the old normal. I don't know if I want a new normal. I'd like the old normal, but
that sounds like crazy.
Yeah, but I'm in one of those categories. I've got my dad is having his turn with lung cancer right now. So. And he's in his 80s. So I'm right at that age where elderly parents mean a high risk, and he's not in a home, thank goodness. So I get to go and well, I call him Princess because he tells me what he wants and I go do it for him. So I think he's going to make that last for years. It's going to drag that on for years. But so I would I don't want to spend too long making fun of my dad, although I'd love to spend a great amount. I'll do a different video on that. For those of you listening today, expect a video of me making fun of my dad on a different video. So we've got a couple of days left. Yeah. Trevor, anyone that sits through these videos, and I think people are the numbers are that people are watching, but we got to make it entertaining. So
this is my favorite one. I'm loving this. This is great.
Well, I also don't want to keep people from life. So I do have one sort of last question for you as we kind of wrap up. We've got a couple of days left to go, and then people are going to vote. What have you got planned in the next couple of days? What would you like voters in Abbotsford Mission to know? Kind of give us a little summary of your thoughts on the last couple of days here.
Get out and vote. and make out, don't be afraid of change, and don't be stuck in this binary. We've seen what the other politicians have to offer. I have no experience, but I'm a quick study and I work very hard. I'm a small business owner. I'm not afraid to put in 120 hours a week, right? And I will dedicate that to the constituency. To me,
I think we lost you for a second there, Trevor. Are we getting?
But you're voting for your representative. You're not voting for a party. This whole idea that we're voting for a party, and I go through write-ins and I see pictures of John Horgan and everybody's writing it. So it's scary, right? And we have this cult of personality around the parties almost that's developing. You're voting for your local representative. You're voting for someone who's going to represent you in the legislature. And I would do that proudly, and I hold individual freedom and liberty as the penultimate goal of government to uphold. That's what it's supposed to protect. If somebody's falling through the cracks, if somebody's not being heard or being oppressed, you've been hearing about oppression a lot lately. If that's happening, that's what I would be there for. Right? And this other stuff and going and pumping in the legislature and getting laws changed, that's secondary after making sure that people are able to navigate the system properly and get through it. And we have a system set up that's supposed to be that people aren't, it's supposed to remedy suffering. And we have all of these social programs, and yet so many people are still slipping through the cracks. So, either the social programs aren't working and we need to reimagine them, or our MLAs aren't working and the parties are dominating and the MLAs and silencing them and not letting them do their job. So we need some actual change. And, I'm passionate and I'm not afraid to stand up and speak my mind and be counted. So, the time it could be now, could be 4 years from now, but the time for change is coming, and I'll be here, and we'll be ready for change. And the Conservative Party has the back of the actual working class British Columbians. It's not the party. The party comes second, the people come first.
Fantastic. Well said. So I've just to reiterate a couple things. Please do go and vote Saturday 8 to 8. Go to electionsbc.ca to find out where your polling station is, and you can register and vote on the spot. I will be taking my 18-year-old daughter to vote for the very first time. So grab a young person, take them to vote as well. It's very important that you do that. It's a right we have, but it's a privilege, and many people in the world don't have it. So make sure you do that. And if you want to find out more about Trevor, he's easily Googleable. So you can Google Trevor Hamilton, BC Conservatives. He is on the candidates list on the BC Conservative website, and you can just Google BC Conservatives.
Oh, my Facebook page is probably better.
And your
That's
Facebook
the one
page.
that, I'm pretty bad at social media, but I got Facebook down pat. So.
Awesome. And he's easy to find there as well, because you can just open Facebook and search for Trevor Hamilton, and he will pop up there, because if you're searching in Abbotsford, he is a local personality now. Facebook says he's a local personality, so you pop up right at the top of search results. So good luck on Saturday, and thank you so much for doing this.
Well, thanks for the time, Vince. This is fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity and your time.
No problem at all. Shall we? Let's do the Zoom goodbye wave, shall we?
All right, you lead. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a good one.